Okay, so for my project, I decided to do it on Merce Cunningham. So, part one, we're going to talk about the genre. Define your choreographer's genre. Dancer and choreographer Merce Cunningham influenced 20th century art with his postmodern dance and collaborations with important figures of the American art scene, such as composer John Cage and artists Robert Rauschenberg and Andy Warhol. Cunningham founded Merce Cunningham Dance Company in 1953 to challenge traditional ideas of dance and the expectations of audiences. Where are the genre's world roots? The emergence of postmodern dance in the 1960s raised the issue of whether this type of performance could be considered dance. One confusing aspect of postmodern dance is the term postmodern implies that this form of dance takes place in the future. The choreographers consider themselves to be postmodern, use many different styles. They are similar in that they take an anti modern approach in departing from traditional aspects of modern dances. Many choreographers shared the aims of experimental theaters of the 1960s and 1970s, especially the idea that dance and theatrical performances could be rituals for both performers and audience. Explain how the artist you studied belongs to the genre. Were they a pioneer? Did they embody the ethos of a particular subculture? His philosophy declared all elements of performance, music, dancing bodies, sets, and costumes to be of equal importance, and he dispensed with conventional plots. His pioneering video work questioned the use of the stage. He and his collaborators also incorporated chants into elaborate systems of their performances to create abstract and haunting dances. A recipient of numerous awards and honorary degrees, including doctorates from Wesleyan and Bard colleges, Cunningham was always researching for ways to innovate. In 2008, he collaborated with open-ended group to release Loops, an abstract rendering of his dance movements. Cunningham signaled the beginning of a reconception of dance, the idea that theatrical dance was marked by storytelling, emotional expression, and the fixed relationship to music and decor was shattered by his work. Many choreographers in the next generation of modern dance have been called post Cunningham or post-modern. Part two, we're going to talk about the artist. Describe your choreographer's personal history. Reveal your subject's artistic influences. How do they contribute to his development as a dancer slash choreographer? Cunningham was born as Mercer Philip Cunningham on April 19, 1919, in Centralia, Washington, a small lumbering and coal mining town where he grew up and developed an interest in theater and dance, an interest that was neither encouraged nor discouraged by his father, who was a lawyer. He began studying piano and dance as a teenager, learning from a local teacher and former vaudeville performer who instructed him in the arts of folk, tap, and ballroom dancing. Upon graduation from Centralia High School, Cunningham enrolled at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., but only attended for 1 year before returning to Washington State and enrolling at the Cornish School of Fine and Applied Arts. While a student at Cornish, Cunningham began performing in amateur and vaudeville productions, as well as a few nightclubs in Oregon and California. After honing his performance skills in this manner, he joined Lester Horton Dance Theater, a repertory company in California, for the summer of 1938. In 1939, Cunningham attended the Bennington School of Arts at Bennington College in Vermont, and it was there that he was seen by Martha Graham, who asked him to come to New York City and become a member of her dance company. Cunningham's talents as a dancer quickly led him to become one of Graham's most favored students and earned him roles as a soloist and partner in the company's productions shortly after he joined the group in 1940. He continued to perform with Graham's company until 1945. Cunningham began to experiment with choreography in the early 1940s, creating such works such as Shimmers and The Wind Remains, both in 1943, and Root of an Unfocused, Tossed as It Is Untroubled, and Four Walls, all in 1944. Graham supported the choreographic efforts of her dancers and often presented their works in production. Cunningham took advantage of the opportunity presented to him by Graham and performed his own work, Mysterious Adventure, in 1945. This early work was marked by Cunningham's use of the technique of stopping motion, so the dancer remains immobile on stage, something that had never been done in dance performance. It was the first of many innovations to American modern dance created by the young choreographer. Okay, next is explain world events and cultural shifts that may have influenced your artist. This isn't so much a cultural, or a world event, but more of a cultural shift. The 1960s were a time of experimentation, revolution, and freedom, and Cunningham embodied all of these forces. His followers at that time were largely other artists, but that began to change in the 1970s as his work gained exposure through regular video and television performances in New York. Cunningham had become mainstream. He continued to perform with the company through the 1980s. Cunningham was the key issue dividing the world of modern dance in the 1960s. At a time when people were questioning structures, Cunningham saw that dance could be done in another way, that anything, in fact, could be considered dance. Performing a grand jeté, riding a bicycle, or simply standing still. For Cunningham, dance is a visible action of life. He revolutionized the way we think about and look at dance. So really, with this culture shift of everything, people in the 1960s experimenting, and then as our politics and culture started to progress, this actually directly affected the postmodern dance era. So describe your subject's influence on dance in America. Did they develop a new technique, theory, choreographic tool, etc.? So he was considered to be a trailblazing figure in the modern dance community who has influenced generations of dancers and choreographers. Merce Cunningham is renowned worldwide for his distinctive, often controversial concepts and his experimental choreography. In creating his 1952 production, Sweet by Chance, Cunningham first tested a method known as choreography by chance, which meant simply Cunningham would compose various movements for individual body parts, the bending of an elbow, the turning of a head, and place the movements on slips of paper, which were shuffled and then chosen randomly according to the toss of a coin or simply by chance, but never by design. The coin tosses would determine the movements Cunningham would include in his compositions, and then the choreographer would put them together. In the mid 1960s, Cunningham began to try the system called indeterminacy, which involved the use of dance, film clips, music, and electronic sounds, hums, whistle, beeps, and the like, in a blend of movement and sound created by the dancers as they improvised movement. This system was employed in Cunningham's Variations 5, a 1965 production that continually varied in length due to its impromptu construction. In the 1990s, Cunningham found a new tool to assist him in choreographing his productions, the computer. Using the computer, he's capable of breaking down a single movement into tiny segments, discovering in the process new body positions that he then incorporates into his choreography. So next it says to speak about your artist's signature work. Share a link within the discussion to a short video clip that reflects your artist's style or presents their signature work. And so for this one, I chose to link Variations 5, created in 1965. The reason I chose this one was my interest in its impromptu nature. So essentially, like I was saying earlier, this piece actually always varied in length depending on how it was performed. The video that I could find on YouTube was only a minute long, but I think it perfectly encapsulates Cunningham's style and the uniqueness of his piece. I thought another interesting part was that when it's been performed other times, it was either longer than a minute or shorter than a minute. It just so happened that this one video was only a minute long, and that in itself was also kind of impromptu. So lastly, it says to illustrate your subject's connection to future generations of dancers. How has your choreographer shaped the lineage of dance? Multiple generations of dancers learned their craft from Merce Cunningham, often through classes he led in his New York studio. His rigorous and physically exacting technique explored, among other things, the idea of individual body parts operating independently of each other. His philosophical teachings were just as influential. He taught his dancers to question commonly held assumptions about dance and the arts, inspiring legions of students through his commitment to experimentation and risk taking. And many with whom he worked would go on to become choreographic innovators in their own right. And I think that's why he was so influential, because not only did he teach you a dance technique, but he also taught you the why behind it and the philosophy behind it. And that has affected multiple generations of postmodern dancers to this day. All right, that's my project on Merce, and thank you for listening.